Hi there. This is just a quick update about a recent article in Variety about the budget for House of the Dragon Season 1. That they were interviewing a couple of the production staff members, and they revealed that the average per episode budget for Season 1 on this, and average, obviously the battle episodes are bigger, average per episode budget is slightly under $20 million. Which is almost twice as much as the average per episode budget for Game of Thrones Season 6. I'm comparing those two because that was the last full 10-episode season. This will also have 10 episodes, not like one of the truncated final seasons. Now, that is not the point of this video, just to wow you with, wow, look how expensive it is. Like, clickbait is doing that. That's what they've always done. Gone, wow, look how expensive Season 7 is. Look how expensive Season 8 is. Therefore, it equates to being amazing. Like before they'd even seen a frame of it. We've done that before. That is the exact mentality Benioff and Weiss had. They were showing off how much they could spend. Because it's the only real skill they ever had, spending other people's money. But you remember it was like when they had Season 8, or even like Battle of the Bastards, which was filled with plot holes, the way they would talk about it wasn't explaining specific craftsmanship or training or writing things or plot lines, the behind-the-scenes hype stuff. Like in interviews, the promos they put out in Entertainment Weekly were basically long lists of how many people they hired. Like barraging us with figures and the scale of it, the money that went into it. They'd always try to hammer that into us. It really deflecting from all the story criticisms of, look how big this is. It is the biggest show in history. We hired 300 stuntmen, which is an absurdly large number. Look how many horses are in this shot. Look, we built a fully realized King's Landing. And that doesn't equal quality. In fact, that's really the only thing people who defend the later seasons keep saying. They don't try to defend the story, just, oh yeah, it was the biggest show ever. Why was it the biggest show ever? What do you mean by bigger? Most expensive. That they would do that, specifically Benioff and Weiss, in the glorified publicists at Entertainment Weekly who were promoting them, going, look how expensive this season is, to wow us with its scale. And this is the complete opposite for House of the Dragon. That these were production staff members, they didn't actually give their names. And the point of the article, I'm keeping this short because I want you to actually read it. Go to the link below. What really impressed me is they kept emphasizing how little they spend relative to their needs. And saying, we fought hard to keep the per episode cost under $20 million. And that, if that sounds weird to you, I'll explain that. That, oh, it's almost twice as much, but I'm here going, wow, look how efficient they were. They spend a lot of it explaining the interview. We have experience working on Game of Thrones as, the directors who were doing the real heavy lifting, not the showrunners. And also they cited Westworld of just, from other HBO projects, we have tried to streamline our process. I don't know if this is them lying to us, because Benioff and Weiss lied all the time. If we're this happy family behind the scenes, we all work together really well. I mean, objectively, we have interviews where, like, the directors were fighting with them. That they wanted to project it. So whoever admits that there are behind-the-scenes problems, that, oh, it was a well-oiled machine when really it wasn't. But no, like, when it comes to, like, money numbers, it's hard to lie about, that we managed to keep it under $20 million because we didn't act like we had infinite money. That on Game of Thrones, it's like they didn't even bother to check what their budget was. Even though it was a problem every year, they just outspend themselves because they weren't paying attention. Basically, there's 2 points to this. First, context for Game of Thrones, and then context for other rival TV shows on this scale. Game of Thrones itself started out with a pretty meager budget relative to its needs. Season 1, they only had a budget of $6 million per episode, on average. And they couldn't really do full-scale battle scenes. Now, I don't expect something on the scale of a movie scale Helm's Deep battle scene, but I expect something that can tell the story. And there were points when this limited the story, like having the Battle of the Green Fork off-screen and Whispering Wood off-screen. And you could have just a limited POV of one part of the cavalry charge and not show the entire battle in fully realized detail, but put in something. It was notably lacking because they had a relatively limited budget, because turns out HBO didn't trust them. Rightly so, after the pilot failed. So $6 million per episode really isn't enough, and it increased incrementally every few years to the point that by season 6, 10-episode season of, on average, 10 million apiece. Which, to be honest, at times they were just, even then, they were at times just showing off how much money they could spend. I really criticized Battle of the Bastards was not a triumph of television. That's the point I turned on the show, when there were so many plot holes. It made no sense. Even tactically, it made no sense. And everything that you were complaining about in season 8, you can say about Battle of the Bastards in terms of the illogic of what is going on. But just don't think about it. Turn your brain off. Focus on the action and the spectacle. And they were throwing money at, yes, the production team, the directors and stuntmen knew how to film a cavalry charge. That is not a reflection on the writers. They do that all the time. They go, oh yeah, you like that cavalry charge? I'm the guy who... Cogman had this whole thread on Twitter where he yelled this a couple of months ago. I'm the one who hired him, so that means I'm responsible for it. That when people try to compartmentalize, well, the writing wasn't very good, but the music is great. That kind of thing. That really harms their ego. That Cogman had to go on Twitter and say, oh yeah, we hired the music guy, so you're really thanking us. And it went on like that of, no, the fact that you're the guys with all this money spending it doesn't mean you're responsible for it, because the real talent were the other people. You just cut them a check. And in many cases, they succeeded in spite of you, not because of you. For example, Battle of the Bastards, Sapochnik had a frightening interview, which also was one of the things that turned me on against the show, finally, where he revealed that they just wanted, like, a melee pile for literally 20 minutes. Like, what the Long Night Battle was, where it was just people being gang-tackled all the time. That's what Battle of the Bastards, their version of it, was. Sapochnik had to argue them down from that and go, look, we'll have a pincers movement, we'll do stuff with a charge, we'll try to have a shield wall and try to have some strategy in here. What you like about Battle of the Bastards is all Sapochnik. And then they took credit for it. Well, we're the guys who made Battle of the Bastards because we hired Sapochnik. Yeah, and he fought you every step of the way to make something presentable, but get back to this, it's throwing money at it even then, and they put all of this money on screen to wow people with Battle of the Bastards, and then would turn around and say, oh, we didn't have enough CGI money left to do Direwolf stuff, so we had to kill off Rickon and Shaggy Dog. Or maybe not, that's why they kill him, we can't confirm that, but they turn around and go, we don't have enough CGI for more dragon stuff, or more Direwolf stuff. And it's like the same people saying this of, oh, come on, we have infinite money. Well, we didn't have enough money for the Direwolf. Point is, I think $6 million per episode, even if Benioff and Weiss weren't making this show, $6 million per episode is a little beneath what our needs are. That this is something on the scale of HBO's Rome. It's going to be expensive because it's very popular, but ballpark, $10 million per episode is roughly what we'd actually need. I'd have been happy if House of the Dragon had $10 million per episode in season 1. They did tell us a year ago, the head of HBO openly said, we don't think they need to prove themselves, by starting off with a small budget again. This is an established franchise, even if it's a spin-off. So this will start out with a budget comparable to the later Game of Thrones seasons. I was never worried about that, but I thought it would be, like roughly the same as season 6. $10 million-ish, which, if run by competent people this time, could show us a lot more stuff. Imagine if season 6 was run by people who weren't wasting money, how much more they could have put in if they were using it efficiently. Because for every $1 of content you like, they wasted another $2. That, we could have had more Ironborn stuff. they cut out Naga's bones because, we ran out of CGI budget, if they'd been using it intelligently and efficiently. You'll notice I'm not comparing it to Season 8 because it's got a lower episode count. Season 8 was roughly $15 million per episode across 6 episodes. But, there's 2 giant battle episodes, then relatively quiet episodes, and it's the numbers. I don't like comparing when the numbers are different like that, the episode count. Also, the things I was starting to get annoyed about in Season 6 grew to the point that even casual viewers thought it was absurd by Season 8. Building a fully realized King's Landing that they barely used. They built a fully realized Winterfell castle. You can see it in behind-the-scenes stuff. Again, the part that blows my mind is when they're showing we built a fully realized Winterfell bakery and a fully realized Winterfell brewery. And not once does either one appear for a second on camera. At all. Not the interior, much less the fully furnished bakery interior. It's just how much money went into this that could have been used on something else if you had bothered planning it out. Did you... I really wonder if the production designers, the people that spent months building these things, did they ever see a script with, stage instructions, or when they finally did see the script, did they realize in horror, this thing I spent 6 months building, the camera is never pointed at it? Did you think of this before you started? And they really didn't. But Season 8, $15 million per episode for a 6-episode season, even if it is supposed to be the climactic ending, that's getting crazy. So, what I think the good benchmark is, that is Season 6. That's why I'm comparing that. The last 10-episode one, also the last one that I think had not outright crazy, just throwing money around. So, $10 million per episode would be decent. Instead, we got nearly $20 million per episode for House of the Dragon Season 1. But they're still stressing, we didn't go crazy with this, we fought to keep it under $20 million, and it's almost, we're not trying to hype ourselves up as, look how much we're spending. I love that these are people who do not think like Benioff and Weiss. The fact I'm spending other people's money so much of their money, means I'm a success. That, yeah, you can helm a $200 million movie, but it can be a box office bomb. That one doesn't equate to the other. But that's the second point I want to get to. Well, why is that relatively low? Well, moderate. Compared to the rising spending in all of the rest of TV by their major competitors. By Disney, by Amazon. That some of the other networks are getting huge budgets for their stuff. The hugest budget in history is for Amazon's Lord of the Rings, which it costs $465 million for the entire season. Now let's see, House of the Dragon, roughly $20 million per episode, 10 episodes. That's approaching $200 million. That Game of Thrones was about $100 million per season. House of the Dragon will be nearly $200 million per season. And Lord of the Rings is $465 million for the entire season, and they keep hyping up it's the most expensive show ever. I'm like, that alone isn't enough to impress me. You need to show me some of the story to actually get me to like it. And we'll see what happens with that. We haven't seen enough to really judge one way or the other for Lord of the Rings. But the figure we've heard on a per-episode basis is that the Lord of the Rings Amazon prequel show has a per-episode budget of $60 million. Granted, they have an 8-episode season, not a 10-episode season. So, it's more concentrated. Obviously, it would be a little higher than $20 million compared to House of the Dragon. But this is over twice as much, roughly on a season scale. Looking at the overall season budget, this is 2.5 times as much. And that's just Lord of the Rings. I mean, let me look here. Mandalorian is about $15 million per season, but it is a very popular show, and there's a lot of special effects they need to put in Mandalorian on Disney. Amazon's Wheel of Time, that's roughly in the, I think, $10 million range, which is pretty much what you'd expect for something that scale, $10 million. And I'd be happy with the $10 million. You can do that if you use it wisely. I know there's going to be a lot of Dragon CGI for us. The thing that really shocked me, like Lord of the Rings, you kind of expect would need a huge budget. It's Lord of the Rings, well, Second Age stuff. Stranger Things is the one that really made me sit up in surprise. Stranger Things season 4 is averaging $30 million per episode. When, like, this isn't a fantasy show in an entirely separate world like Middle-earth or Westeros. House of the Dragon is $20 million, slightly less than $20 million per episode. Stranger Things Season 4 is $30 million per episode. And it's like a almost double season in two halves. Instead of an 8-episode season, it's like 16 episodes that are going to air in two halves for Stranger Things Season 4. But we've heard $30 million per episode. I guess a lot of this is going into the special effects for the alternate dimension, the Upside Down, that they said we're doing a lot of this with expensive practical effects to make it look more real, and more power to them. But, a lot of it's set in the real world too, that Netflix is really, the criticism that Netflix is throwing money at everything, that you spent how much on this? Granted, it's a flagship show, but they're looking at $30 million per episode for 16 episodes. Let's do some math here. What is that, like 480 million? Well, I don't think that's comparable to Lord of the Rings. If Lord of the Rings is 465, but that's 16 episodes to Lord of the Rings 8 episodes. It's like 2 seasons instead of 1 season. That balances out. But 30 million on average per episode for Stranger Things. 60 million per episode for the 8 Lord of the Rings episodes. Everyone else is really upping their game. This is not even the most expensive show. The House of the Dragon is not the most expensive show that will be airing this year. It's possibly not even number 3. Depending on what they're doing with Witcher and Wheel of Time, we'll see what their budgets are for Season 2 next December. But Lord of the Rings, you expected it to be that big. They went in saying how big it would be, but Stranger Things costing that much more than House of the Dragon really surprised me. I think they're being wasteful. So those two things in context of look at what Game of Thrones cost and actually think later on they were throwing money at it just to impress people. That while House of the Dragon will have an on average varying by episode, but the average per episode cost is twice as much as Game of Thrones Season 6. Which I feel is the last season that we can use for comparison because it's the last 10-episode one. After that, it was just truncated mini movies on TV for something, and they weren't, well organized. It was chaos behind the scenes before they really went off the rails. Compared to Season 6, it's almost twice as much, but compared to all of this competition, yeah, they really seem to have strived to be as efficient as possible. Granted, they told us on Game of Thrones, they kept saying we're such a well-oiled machine because we kept the whole team together on this, and later on we heard it was chaos. No one ever admits when there's chaos behind the scenes. But it's harder to hide expenditures. They might as, if they were really going to lie, they would have lied and said it was 10 million, But whatever it costs, maybe they're fudging the numbers a little. The fact that they're not bragging about how much they spent, regardless of the actual number, but trying to look like they're efficient. Benioff and Weiss weren't even pretending to look efficient. Like, if they're, I keep second guessing, maybe they're lying. Benioff and Weiss weren't even trying to lie about that. They took it as a badge of honor how much money they spent, and were bragging about we would have spent more if we could. Versus this, at least the public face of it, they're saying we are trying to be efficient. We're trying to keep it below 20 million per episode. And yeah, compared to the competition, Stranger Things, Lord of the Rings, it actually isn't the most expensive thing on TV, just throwing stuff at it. I wonder how much of this went into sets and stuff, just the scale. A lot of it will be the dragon CGI. And a lot of people said when this started, how are you going to have 20 dragons on screen? They're not all on screen at the same time, and on top of that, all of the CGI that would have gone to undead zombies and stuff goes to this instead. It's all concentrated in one storyline. And I think that evens out. But this interview made me feel really good that they are not bragging about how much money they spend as if that equates to quality. Because by that logic, Season 8 was the most expensive season. Was it therefore the best season? That whenever people yell at you online, you encounter this all the time, I know I do. People saying, oh yeah, how dare you criticize Benioff and Weiss? Game of Thrones was the best show in history. And when you ask, well, what was best about it? The writing, the stories, they always get to the scale. It was the most successful show in history. It was the biggest show. By that logic, Season 8 had the highest ratings, the highest production budget. The Emmys are rigged, but it managed to win Best Series more for the overall show. But the Emmys are stupid. But the Emmys aren't really awards anymore, any more than the Golden Globes. But just in terms of the production budget and the ratings, Season 8 was the biggest season. Does that mean it was the best season? No. We do this with movies all the time when they make... I don't want to bring up Star Wars stuff, but look how big some of those were. Other superhero megaflops. Where, well, yeah, it was the biggest ratings and biggest budget, but how profitable was it? I mean, did reviewers like it? So I'm happy that the new production team isn't trying to impress us with how much money they're spending, but with how efficient they are.